If we could all rise for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Could the district clerk please take a roll call?
Adam Smith.
Present.
Julie Epstein. Here. Emily Bays.
Present.
Adam Block.
Present.
Deborah Brooks.
Here.
Rachel Gilliar.
Not present.
Nanette Melkonian.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adopt today's agenda. That's the April 2nd, 2024 agenda. Is there a second? Ms. Epstein, all in favor? 6-0. The agenda is adopted. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing employment matters of particular persons. Ms. Bays, second. All in favor? 6-0. We are adjourned. We'll see you in an hour. Excuse me, we are moving into executive. Public session is adjourned. We will be back in an hour.
bell's not working. Mr. Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith? Mr. President?
Aging Adam Smith.
Mr. President? Mr. President, move.
Sorry for the delay. I'd like to make a motion to reconvene into public session. Is there a second? Ms. Epstein, all in favor? 7-0, we are reconvened. Okay. I'm going to make this extremely brief today to make up for our tardiness, but I want to thank everybody for coming. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. The district clerk, could please take a roll call.
Adam Smith,
Present.
Julie Epstein,
Here.
Emily Bays,
Present.
Adam Block,
Present.
Deborah Brooks,
Here.
Rachel Gilliard,
Here.
Nanette Melkonian.
Here.
Thank you.
So, going to try this again and make it even especially brief. We have two very exciting presentations tonight, very exciting. One of them will be the continuation of our budget process, and the second one is the update from our energy performance grant, energy performance contract from Renew, which we are very excited for. And with that, I will give it to Dr. Hines.
Thank you, President Smith. Welcome, everybody. Dr. Shields, if you wouldn't mind a brief enrollment report.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. The last enrollment report was calculated on March 27th. At that time, we had 5,335 students. That's 65 more students than we had at this time last year.
Thank you, Dr. Shields. My update will be brief as well, only because we have two presentations this evening. For our parents who are in attendance, you may have noticed that you received an update regarding the upcoming eclipse. I know many questions have been raised. I could tell you amongst my colleagues, superintendents, not only in our quadrant, but certainly all over Long Island, are wondering what everybody else is doing. For the most part, we're falling in alignment with what most districts are doing, which is everything is as is, meaning we're not, as far as dismissal, it's staying the same. We are not handing out glasses. I know some districts are doing that for elementary kids. But listen, the most important thing is we have our parents talk to our students, or to their children, I should say, making sure they don't look up at the sky. And the same thing we'll do internally with their educators. What also was part of the email that came this afternoon are some really great additional resources for our parents. So in case you wanted to share this with your children, some great resources K through 2, 3 through 6, and 7 through 12. My understanding this won't happen for several more years, so this is very exciting. But at the same time, we also want to be safe. And I'll reserve my other comments once I get to the budget presentation. So thank you. Okay, sorry. And we also have two of our Schreiber students with their updates. We have Layla Musarulis and we have Ian Lawrence. Please come on down. Oh, okay. 2 minutes? That's not a problem.
Do you want to go after community comments?
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Why don't we do community comments first, and then once we have our other student come, we can certainly have an update.
So we're going to move to our first opportunity for the community to be heard. Those wishing to speak, please sign in at the podium. You still can if you haven't already. We want to remind you, each community member will be given up to 3 minutes to speak. Please state your full name at the start of your comments. Please keep them as brief as possible and relate only to school matters. Inappropriate conduct, such as personal attacks, will not be permitted. With that, I think right now we have only one sign up. Ms. Chulfayan.
Dear Board of Trustees, my name is Theodora Chulfayan, and I'm a parent and a resident in the district. I call on you to consider the following as you further work on a budget proposal for our district. And in case I run out of time, I'll be leaving a copy. I would like that to be entered in the permanent record of this meeting, and I hope that it can be found in the meeting minutes, in board docs. So number one, I call on you to take some time out of your schedules to sit down with the actuals of the last 5 years. Please supply them to the library budget book as soon as possible. You're required by law to have columns of actuals next to the budgeted amounts. The library has that. So we should have it too for our district. In that line of thinking, are you in compliance with your own policy number 6,000, which is called fiscal management goals?
Can you repeat that and the number?
6,000.
And what
It
was-
has not been updated in quite some time. So I wonder if you could sit down with the actuals in that policy and, align those two. I think we're in a time of fiscal crisis. Have you thought of identifying waste? I will not, due to potential privacy concerns, I will not mention number 3, but it will be in the folder, so I hope you do look at it. But I'll just generally say that it costs us over $1 million yearly to manage a budget that is under $200 million. And in any other industry, this would not last. And it would be a bust. And just for comparison, you could look at other large, universities, you name it. The management cost is a lot less per a lot more. I'll just cite Columbia University Medical Center, which has $2.2 billion yearly, and the cost of management is just a little over ours. So it's important to compare these numbers. Is it reasonable that residents were presented with two
30
scenarios?
seconds remaining.
Thank you. Both presenting teacher cuts. Is it possible to look at non-instructional costs and consider cuts in that realm in order to make sure that our students continue to have the necessary number of teachers? Number 5, have you made sure that multiple bids are solicited for projects that we obtain the absolute best deal? It is my understanding that certain projects only received a single bid, which, and again, in any other industry, that would not be okay. Are you aware that there are at least 2 accounts named other expenses in the district books?
Time has
I'm just
expired.
going to finish my sentence, please. There's at least 2 accounts named other expenses in the district's books that have expenses over 50% more or so than what was budgeted for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any additional community speakers? If not, we'll move back to our student update.
All right, so we have Lila and we have Ian. Come on down.
Good evening. My name is Ian Lawrence. I'm a senior at Schreiber High School.
Hi, my name is Lila Musarulis. I'm also a senior at Schreiber High School. Since our last student board report, we've celebrated many events.
On Thursday, March 21st, Latin students celebrated their annual Luci Olimpici, or Olympic lights, wearing togas as they competed in a series of fun events.
On Friday, March 22nd, Schreiber teams competed in a school-wide Spike It Up volleyball tournament hosted by Student Council and Yearbook. Proceeds were donated to charity.
On Saturday, March 23rd, Paul D. Schreiber High School's Mall United Nations hosted their 10th Port Mall United Nations Conference. Students from 15 Long Island schools attended with a total of 248 participating delegates. The conference was a great success due to the leadership of over 40 Schreiber students, including Vice Presidents Ava Lucarelli and Alex Wing, Secretary General Millen John, and her advisor, Ms. LeClaire.
The Creative Arts Department hosted a NISMA Solo and Ensemble Festival on Monday, March 25th and Tuesday, March 26th. More than 1,200 student musicians visited Schreiber High School over 2 days to take part in the festival. Over 70 Tri-M Music Honor Society members volunteered and assured that everything ran smoothly. Thank you to the students and staff who contributed to the success of this endeavor.
This past Saturday, Port Baseball Vikings honored fallen NYPD officer Jonathan Diller at their game in Massapequa. Each player and coach wore an official NYPD hat to pay tribute to Officer Diller. Thank you to Cop Shop New York for their generous donation of hats.
We're excited to announce a brand new athletic team this season. The girls' flag football team started their season of firsts with their first home win in team history, defeating Lynbrook 21-18.
The ENL department celebrated the selection of 4 Schreiber students for the prestigious Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Institute in Albany, where they debated legislative bills and exemplified excellence. One of the participants was awarded a $1,400 scholarship for her outstanding work, highlighting the program's role in fostering leadership and empowerment among students.
Tomorrow, Schreiber seniors will attend a pre-gamble Choices and Consequences Assembly presented by the Nassau County District Attorney's Office designed to combat drunk, drugged, and reckless driving. The goal is to reduce injuries and deaths in this most vulnerable age group. Traffic crashes are the #1 cause of death for young people between the ages of 15 and 24 years old. We look forward to celebrating the many important senior year milestones safely.
This past Thursday, we hosted our first wellness afternoon. Wellness activities are great for community building and promoting a sense of belonging. The rain certainly changed some of our outdoor plans, but the weather was no match for the flexibility and resilience shown by those involved.
Everyone was willing to lend a hand and accept a few more attendees. There were 114 workshops over the 2 sessions, many facilitated by students. At the end of our wellness afternoon, many people asked for another in the future. The feedback shared has been very positive so far, and the Wellness Committee sent out a survey to request feedback and new ideas from students and staff. We are happy to find opportunities to elevate student voices, build community, and focus on the well-being of students and staff. This brings me into my selected topic, wellness. Like many students here at Schreiber, I am involved in multiple clubs, honor societies, and sports, so my schedule is packed and I have very little downtime. If any of you have children on the track team, you know that we don't get home from winter meets until midnight. With homework and projects due every day, tests to study for, volunteer hours to complete, and games to train for, it is incredibly easy for me and others to become overwhelmed. It's not as simple as it sounds to set out some time for myself to just relax, when there's always some task I could be doing instead of taking care of myself. With the stress of so many activities and schoolwork, it's hard to turn off. Being at home at the end of a busy day does not equal resting. After COVID-19, there was a huge decline in the mental health of teenagers, and although the pandemic is over, many students still deal with depression and anxiety. Struggling mental health coupled with busy schedules is not a good pair and often leads to breakdowns or burnouts. That's where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is extremely important for high school students. It has been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression in teens by helping them become more aware of their thoughts and emotions and teaching them how to manage these feelings in a healthy way. Rather than turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms like substance abuse or risky behaviors, mindfulness teaches teens healthier ways to manage their stress. Mindfulness encourages self-awareness, which helps students develop a better understanding of themselves and what is important to them. Emotional regulation is also taught through mindfulness, so teens will learn to pause, observe their feelings, and choose how to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Mindfulness practices help to relax the mind, which in turn improves attention and concentration, which can benefit academic performance and other tasks. While we hosted a wellness afternoon for 2 hours at the end of a shortened period's class schedule, a focus on wellness comes in many forms. It can be a mindful moment during the day, connecting with the people around us, or dedicating time for an interest that brings joy. Incorporating these small moments of wellness into our daily lives can have a significant impact on our overall mental and physical health. That's what we aimed to showcase during our wellness afternoon. It wasn't just about providing a break from the academic rigor, but also about introducing and reinforcing the concept of self-care and community care among our peers and the faculty. The activities we held here at Schreiber ranged from meditation workshops to creative arts and even physical activities like yoga, dance, and pickleball. Each workshop was designed to cater to different interests, showing that wellness is not a one-size-fits-all concept. We wanted everyone to find something that could fit into their routine, something they could take beyond just one afternoon. The enthusiasm we saw was truly inspiring. Not only did students participate, but teachers and staff members also joined in. This collective participation highlighted the universal need for wellness practices and the community's willingness to support each other's well-being. Our survey following the event showed that many found these activities to be an effective way to manage stress and would like to see more wellness initiatives in the future. It's quite clear that there is a demand for continued focus on wellness and self-care here at Schreiber. This brings me to my proposal. I believe that integrating wellness activities into the school curriculum or as a regular part of school life is imperative to benefit our school community. I envision a consistent approach to mindfulness and mental health, not just one afternoon, where students and staff can engage in various wellness activities, learn more about mental health, and build stronger community ties. I propose starting small with monthly mindful moments, leading up to wellness days every year in the fall and in the spring. This gradual implementation will allow us to tailor the program based on feedback and participation levels, ensuring it meets the needs and interests of our school community, as well as put an emphasis on bettering the mental wellness of our students and staff.
We're not just advocating for a temporary solution, but for a sustainable shift in how we approach education and student life at our school. Wellness should be interwoven into the fabric of our daily routines, promoting a balanced and healthy lifestyle for all. Wellness leads into my topic of being comfortable in the learning environment. As we lead into the end of our school year, temperatures in classrooms will be rising again. As Anna Drews discussed in September, the first couple weeks of school were at record high temperatures and became increasingly difficult for students to stay focused, especially in areas of building without air conditioning, such as the gym or many classrooms on the second floor. While it may not be possible to install AC in more sections of the school in light of new budget cuts, it is definitely worth being aware of the heat as we near the hot summer months towards the end of the school year. Instead of installing new AC, some solutions may include, as Anna mentioned, having a list of unoccupied rooms readily available or entirely relocating some classes in the months of May and June. I remember at the beginning of the year, one of my classes on the second floor was so unbearably hot that we had to try to find a new unoccupied room in the AC, in the A wing with AC. While this was effective at beating the heat, the time it took to find a free room and relocate the class took valuable time from class. If some classes are already scheduled to be relocated, or the step of finding a free room can be skipped, more classes would be able to escape the heat while not taking too much time out of class. I hope in the future, if budget allows, more permanent solutions such as installing AC in more rooms around the building can be implemented too. Thank you, Dr. Hines, Mr. Smith, and the Board of Education for inviting us to speak about our selected topics. We're excited about positively contributing to our school community.
Together, we can foster a more supportive, engaged, and wellness-focused community. We look forward to working with Dr. Baer and the Wellness Committee to make this vision a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. And Ian, it sounds like there's a lot going on at Schreiber, and you guys definitely gave us a lot to think about. So with that, we're going to move to there's no more community speakers, right? Okay. With that, we're going to move on to our first presentation. So we will invite up Mr. Rob Ragazine from Renew.
All right, I think that's a little bit better. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come back and speak to the board and provide an update on our energy performance contract project. Next slide, please. So again, we're going to go through this. It's not we don't have a lot of slides, but I do want to provide an update on some things and just make sure we're all on the same page moving forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so the project, we've been able to add another technology into the project from when we last spoke. The lighting project is the same as it was. The solar project is going to focus on rooftop solar. The pipe and valve installation's the same, plug loads are the same, the building envelope improvements are the same. The ceilings, we're going to be able to add a third building to put ceilings in, and that's going to be the administration building. We'll be able to add ceilings on the first floor. So we'll have Manor Haven, Sousa, and the admin building getting new ceilings and new lighting in there. And then a recent challenge that was presented to us is the condensate pump at the high school. The tanks and the pumps are leaking. We're going to be able to take care of that, incorporate it as part of the project, and see if we can help solve that problem sooner rather than later. Okay, this is just a visual summary of where the different opportunities are going to take place. Lighting, weatherization, and plug load controls are going to be in all buildings. Solar is only on the roofs, not on the admin building, not on Weber. Again, that's the same as it was before. Our pipe installation is going to focus on Weber. And then the ceilings, as I just spoke about, in the 3 buildings, and the condensate pump at the high school. Again, it's just a refresher on the lighting. Most of the lighting was already upgraded to LED in the last EPC. We've tried to identify every other fixture that wasn't upgraded and include that in our project. Again, where we're going to put the lights on, we'll also be adding controls where it makes sense. For solar, again, it's the key driver to this project in terms of creating these energy savings or the energy generation. We wanted to maximize solar, and we've increased the size of the rooftop installations. We took the carports out of the project for a couple of reasons. The bottom line was they really weren't cost effective. By taking them out, we've actually made the project more financially attractive and allowed us to add some of that other work that I just spoke about. However, the carports do remain an option for a future phase if it makes sense at a later date. These are just the layouts. Again, going to be tough to see at a distance, but these are the layouts of where the panels are going to go on each of the buildings. So we've got the high school here. It's a little bit larger than it was. Daly, there's Guggenheim, almost 400 kW there. Manor Haven, and Sousa, and South Salem. Pipe and valve, again, same as it was when we started. This is focusing in Weber, and even more specifically areas in the cafeteria. Okay. All right, the plug load controls, that'll be in every building, and again, it's over 700 pieces of equipment that we should be able to help shut down in off hours and really reduce that parasitic load of energy that gets sucked into those pieces of equipment. The building envelope, again, it's a lot of insulation, it's weatherization, there's some sealing of roof and wall intersections, and really just tightening up the buildings, and which should be very, very cost effective. Again, the ceilings, so just something to think about in the ceilings. We're not really, there's a couple of areas, but the ceilings we're not showing any energy savings for. Okay, it's really a capital improvement. We will put in new LED lighting fixtures in those areas to make sure it looks consistent with everything else. But in the 3 buildings, we'll get those installed. So again, we're treating it as more of a capital improvement than an energy savings measure. There's really no energy savings for it. And same with the condensate pump. Now, there are going to be some energy savings from this measure. The challenge is we really haven't been able to document the usage prior to the leak and then during the leak so that we could compare it to what's done afterwards. So there's going to be savings. We can estimate it, but consider it free savings to the project. It's not savings that's being included in the project. All right, so here's the financial overview, and in summary, all the projects combined equal about just over $8.7 million. There's going to be almost $2 million back from the federal tax credit for the solar project. So it brings the total project down to about $6.3 million. And then the guaranteed energy savings as of today, let's say, is $450,000 a year. Okay, and that will escalate based on the requirements of the RFP. So when we last met, we were getting ready to take on the comprehensive energy analysis. We are underway with that. We have completed that and submitted it for review. So right now it is with your architect. John's in the process of reviewing this, and based on his feedback, we'll make any necessary changes, get that finalized so we can start the process of submitting to the SED. Now this, again, so I expect to get feedback from John pretty shortly. He did tell us that the review process at SED currently sits at about 22 to 24 weeks. In terms of a proposed schedule, and right now we expect the CEA to be finalized hopefully by the end of April. From there, we'd be able to present the board and the district with the energy services agreement for review and execution. The submittal to SED is targeted for somewhere around July. Based on their current review process, we think approval would happen somewhere around the beginning of the year, so we'll be optimistic and say January. At that point, the district would then begin to explore its options for obtaining project financing, and then we would begin material procurement somewhere around the second quarter, commence installation probably late second quarter, possibly third quarter. John seems to think it'll be third quarter. Again, I'll take it a little more optimistically, but either way, we'll be coordinating that with the roof work that's going on and any of the other work going on in the district. So that's the abbreviated update on the project.
Great. So Kathy, we're going to ask our questions directly. Tim, that's okay? Okay. So who has questions? You want to start over there? Deborah, go ahead.
Hello, welcome to Port, and thank you. I don't know if this is a question you can answer, perhaps, Mr. Graham. When were the tanks and pumps discovered to be leaking? And for how long? And what has been the cost to the district because of it, and so forth?
So earlier in this heating season, we noticed that the recovery water was reducing, and through an investigation with our mechanical contractor, we determined that there were some leaks. These tanks are about 10 years old. We put it in for a project for next year, but because of some other considerations, we really leaned on Renew and asked them to see if there was any way to include it in this project, which will take it out of our operating budget, and they were able to accommodate that.
Okay, which will lead me to a further question. I guess I'll go to my last question. How does this get funded? You talked about funding options. Are there non-traditional ways to fund this that we might not know about, or is it operating budget?
So the typical way to fund it is to reach out to bond counsel, go to fund it like a typical energy performance contract. The less conventional ways of doing this Could be, there's other options, but under the language for the performance contracts, there's not really a lot of options. We could look to rebates, and any rebates that are available at the time this project gets approved, we will apply for. It's difficult to include them now in a guaranteed way because the programs change. So in terms of options, there aren't a lot. There's the traditional methods of funding a performance contract. Then you talk about things like a municipal lease or other ways to fund capital projects.
I guess my question.
I think Kathy should come and address the funding question.
Kathy, you can sit here. It's okay, whatever you want.
I ask because if we have a faulty, what's it called, pump? Where did it go? I'm sorry? Yeah, if we have a faulty heating element and we are not able to go forward with this project, I'm more focused, I'm not focused on the lighting right now, I'm actually focused on a piece of equipment that seems that we will need come the cold weather again, so I was just wondering what Plan B is. If we.
We put it in our operating budget, we have estimates, we have quotes.
Oh, okay.
We're prepared to do that, but if it sits in this project, that alleviates some of the burden from our operating budget and saves us to have to do other projects.
Understood, and so now you're.
Same thing with the administration ceiling. That wasn't originally in the project, that was the planned project, for our operational budget. We weren't able to do the ceiling at daily for some design, so, we said, hey, there might be some room there, if we couldn't do daily, could we offset it with the time to do administration? And we think there's room enough in the project to fit those two. So those were two late additions to the EDC.
Okay, and Ms. Manuel, in terms of.
Yes, as
Thank you.
far as the financing goes, we've contacted our fiscal advisor and also our bond counsel. We would go out for a bid. The savings of about $460 a year, is that what those would be used to pay for the debt, to pay for this project?
I understand, thank you, okay. Sorry for my paper rustling. All right, so removing the carports, you said that it's not cost effective. Why isn't it cost effective? And if it's not cost effective, why would we want to think about doing solar energy from the carports in the future?
You tied in with the parking lots, right, and the drainage?
Yeah, as we were going through the comprehensive energy audit, we found out that there are some drainage issues, particularly here at the high school, underneath the parking lots, which created some challenges from an installation perspective. That drove the costs up, even if we could do it, and it's kind of questionable whether it'd be proper to do it. So it's not cost effective relative to the rooftops. All I'm saying is there might be a point in time where some of the costs become more competitive. The costs typically tend to improve over time. COVID changed that a little bit, but in general, it gets a little bit more cost effective as time goes on. So it might be something to explore down the road, but not required, that's for sure.
And talking about a phase two, when we go to do the parking lots, which will eventually need work, that would be a good opportunity to tie those two projects together and get some of those savings.
Okay, I understand. All right, so now I'm looking at all the blue on the various rooftops, and I understand exactly what that means. I've asked this every time, and I'm just going to ask again. Our roofs can sustain the additional weight of all these solar panels and everything that's involved in installing the solar panels? Are roofs, are solar panel ready and compatible?
Yeah, so part of what your architect is doing is confirming all of that, all the loads and everything, but all the discussions we've had so far does not appear to be any structural issues. The roofs are capable of holding the panels.
Thank you, those were my questions.
And there are some roofs that are still slated to be replaced this summer and next summer, which will tie into the project. So that's why some of that timing comes into play. But when we're ready to do the solar, all the roofs will be ready and under warranty.
Thank you.
Ms. Bays, you want to just go?
Thank you. I really don't have much of a question except for the two projects that you're talking about that are more capital improvement than they are energy efficiency type related. And I understand, Brian, why you asked for the pump. But my question is really more a financial question in that, wouldn't those also qualify for a transfer to capital, right? Like, so, because it's a capital improvement, and when we're going out for bonds, is it worth including that $700,000 for us financially as opposed to doing it on the other end of it when we're doing our budgets? So it's more of a, again, just a financial for you, Kathy.
Sure. It makes more sense to have it in with the energy performance contract because the savings that it's generating will cover those expenditures. So we're able to do other projects
Got
that
it.
we think are important.
Thank you.
And there is energy savings associated with the newer LEDs. The last set of LEDs was a retrofit, where this is a full new fixture. The ceilings are, tighter and hold the temperature better, so there is minimal energy savings. It's harder to prove that on the M&B side, so that's why we classified it. With some of those projects we could do through capital improvement, but.
Thank you. I think that's the valid point, is that this is paying for itself, basically. So that's what I wanted to double check. Thank you. I have no other questions.
Great, I'll just go. So, thank you very much for the presentation and all the work that's gone into it. So I guess I have a comment and then a question that'll feed into is, it kind of feels like what we're getting is limited. It seems like there wasn't a tremendous amount, there wasn't too many findings, and it seems like a lot of what we're getting are really just items that kind of sustain themselves, which is great. I think obviously we want to reduce our footprint, but it just feels like ultimately we're not getting a lot of like comfort items or additional fringe benefits out of this. It's just a lot of, okay, you're going to get solar panels that will support themselves. You're going to get plug load controls to shed the phantom loads, which kind of supports itself. But we're not getting a lot of like student or employee-facing improvements out of all of this, which is a little bit different than what we were hoping for when the process started. So I really just want to ask, are we sure that this is something that we really want to go ahead with and deal with adding more bonds, et cetera, being that it seems like it's just mostly kind of self-sustaining energy improvements, again, which are great, we want them, but I want to ask you, Brian and Kathy, do you feel as strong about this now, or are we just kind of going along a process and this is the point we got to? Because to me, this isn't so compelling that I'm like, wow, we have to do this.
Looking at future budgets, this is going to help us with the future budgets of reducing our expenditures so that hopefully in the future, this will help us to be just more sustainable, but also the savings are significant.
But how much of, for at least 10 years, more than 10 years, right, these things don't, the improvements, the savings are only being used to pay back the cost of installing them. So you're really talking about like year 13 or something like that. And I'm curious to what extent these items are really even operating at 100% efficiency by year 13. Like I know on residential panels, they kind of have a curve that I know they've gotten better, but the curve really falls off their energy production over time. And I think that when you're getting to about 10 years, you're really starting to get to where it's flat and it really starts to drop off. So I don't know that we can say for sure that it's going to help us in future budgets.
See, I believe it will because your energy costs continue to rise. So when we have our measurements, they're assuming certain assumptions. A lot of times those are really conservative projections. So if our energy costs continue to rise, you are going to recognize savings there. And it's a way of getting things done now instead of waiting.
Yeah.
So,
This manual that the savings are in perpetuity. I think you will see a degradation of your payback on the solar, but the ROI is gonna, not.
Brian, just use the microphone just because
Yes,
the
sir.
audience on YouTube.
So I believe the savings are in perpetuity. I think you will see a degradation of the payback from the solar, but not, extreme. It's going to go from 100 to 90 to 80, but it is still going to. You'll also have the infrastructure will remain, even if we should look to change or update the panels as better technology comes along. A lot of that infrastructure would remain in place. The ceilings will be an immediate update, the condensate pump, those things will have an immediate payback. I also think the savings is usually conservative. In almost all of the measurement and verification reports I've ever seen, the savings usually outperforms. They want to make sure they're covering the project, so you're usually getting a greater benefit than is predicted, and you're getting those savings immediately through those first 10 to 13 years before you start to recoup the full value.
And is there, I guess my last question is, and again, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I just want to ask these questions before we keep moving, is what is the risk, if any, to the district and the taxpayers of this?
Savings are guaranteed through the project, so if the project should not meet those savings, they're guaranteed through the project, and
they're
the
guaranteed-
district is covered.
And I know I asked this in the beginning of the process, but they're guaranteed by Renew? Or is there like insurance, is there a rating on that guarantee?
Yep. So we actually are going to be using a third-party insurance company, which we feel is actually better for our clients. So the two leaders in the industry are Hartford Steam Boiler and Lloyd's of London. There's another entity that's very well known as well, but we'll be shopping it to one of those three. So besides Renew standing behind it, we'll have an insurance policy.
Great, and that's paid for, that's included in the price, that's not something we have to pay for? Okay.
Yeah, it's included in the price.
Okay, so I mean, that's good enough for me. It sounds like as long as the taxpayer is protected and we're getting all of this effectively for free, it seems like there's no downside, so I'm okay. So, Julie, Ms. Epstein? Ms. Gilliar?
The questions so far were very thorough, so I only have one additional that's mostly just a clarifying question, because I'm sure some of the people who are watching are jumping in now. The guaranteed savings that we have is the minimum number. We could realize more savings than that each year. And the guaranteed amount of savings will cover the full cost of the debt each year. So there's no cost to the taxpayer at all for doing this. Thank you.
There's also the potential for increased rebates. Mr. Raguseen talked about the rebates. Those come and go, pretty regularly, so it's hard to predict where we're going to be at when we start the installation in 2 years. But in most of the projects, we've seen full or escalated rebates by the time of construction.
Ms. Malconian?
I have a very basic question. Lighting controls means lights turn off when people are not in the rooms?
Yeah, that's one form of it, and then the state also requires, depending on the area, but if there are windows, say in a classroom, there'd be daylighting controls as well. We're not really affecting a lot of those areas, they were done already, but we're going to have the controls in ultimately, yes, to turn off the lights when they're not being used.
But plugs as well, Nanette, it's the right?
I got the plugs, so
It's the plugs though, like it goes off, which
For the-
is, we don't have any of those.
Right.
There's been a lot of new technology in occupancy controls. I know you can remember originally when they came out, every 10 minutes the lights would turn off and somebody would have to dance around. They're much more advanced now, and they're only in appropriate spaces, so I don't think we'll have any issues.
Dr. Block?
Just one question related to state aid. So we obviously don't know, and I saw you have two scenarios, one where we get state aid and one where we don't get state aid. So if we get state aid, what happens budgetarily? Meaning, does it reduce the amount of time that we're paying back the loans? And let's say we're collecting savings on this in year 10 instead of year 15? Or do you get the savings in the year that you get the state aid?
So I'm not sure of the question exactly, but I think what you're asking is, we will receive state aid on it. You could receive additional state aid, an additional 10%, if you went out to the voters and asked for voter approval. But that's not necessary. We could actually do the project because the savings will fund the debt service. But when the state aid is generated, it would be, I think, 6 months after we file the cost reports, the final cost reports. So does that answer?
So meaning at the tail end of the project in like 15 years, or like each when the state aid is
Right.
passed, you get it
right.
that year.
So at the end of the project, Jessica files a final cost report with the architect. So this could take, what, 2 or 3 years to complete?
The installation itself should be done in about a year, but we're probably not going to be able to start for another year.
Right.
And then some possible.
So after the project is completed, after a year and a half or so, worst case 2 years, that's when the state aid would start generating.
Okay, so it would accrue after the build.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have one more question too. I'm going to ask, do you want to go first? Okay. I'll ask mine and then since I have my mic on. I think I asked this before in the last time you heard, but how is Renew paid? You guys are paid out of the projects?
So when you go for your financing, we'll get paid as if it's any other project. There'll be a drawdown schedule. We get paid during construction through the completion of construction.
Okay. And where is that number in this 8.7? Where is your fee? Where is that in the numbers?
That's, the 8.7 is the total project cost.
No, I understand, but so you guys are effectively being paid out of the cost of these projects. Where is your profit in this? Where is it?
So it's in the $8.7 million price.
I understand. So are all of these numbers being competitively bid out to subs? Where do these numbers come from?
Yeah, so we've had, as part of the CEA process, we've nailed down the scope and gotten the details down. We've gotten pricing from our subcontractors, and that's how we've come up with the price.
Okay. So you guys are effectively operating as the general contractor? Yeah.
Yes.
And then Brian, we feel comfort that these numbers are the market for all these projects? Because effectively the general contractor is running the process, right?
Yes, we didn't.
Yeah.
Also, the architecture fees come out of this as well. So the architect looks at all of the cost reporting and makes sure that those numbers also make sense.
Okay. So there's going to be like an AIA form and it's going to show all the trades and effectively your markup, general conditions, all that?
Yes.
Okay. And that's where your profit is in that, is in a fee effectively, or are you self-performing anything?
There will be areas of the project we self-perform, for instance, the ceiling installation. That's something we do in-house. The project management will self-perform, but we'll have electrical subcontractors and mechanical subcontractors doing that work.
Okay. What percentage of the values would you say you're self-performing?
It would be small. Besides the project management, it's really just the ceiling scope. So the ceiling scope is $544,000, I believe, out of the $8.7 million.
Okay. And is there, are you going to have bids to justify the pricing, or or is there like per square foot pricing for those parts of the scope?
We priced it out based on actually looking at what's required, the demolition, the products, the labor. It does work out to a cost per square foot, and it varies between buildings, but we didn't price it based on 10,000 square feet at X per square foot. We actually estimate the project like we do every project.
I see. Okay. So I'm just trying to, that's usually sometimes a red flag for me when the GC self-performs and doesn't have a bid against the self-performed work, but I guess it's small enough. Brian, you're comfortable with that piece of it? So again.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How did you get comfortable?
We've done millions of dollars of work with Renew. We found Renew as a subcontractor on a lot of other EPC projects. We found their work, all their work is competitively bid through state contracts. They're a leader in the K-12 industry, and we've had good experiences with them.
Okay, sounds good.
As you were speaking, I started thinking again. So I know everything has a life expectancy, and also things become obsolete, and also things break. So how is that handled through? And I understand there are different components here. Lighting is different than solar panel. I understand all that, but how does a district handle when either the technology becomes obsolete, or the savings become obsolete, or something breaks, or the life expectancy stops? How do we keep this going into the perpetuity, since none of this will last as is into perpetuity in terms of materials?
Yeah, so all of the equipment all comes with manufacturer warranties, and they become after, so we're going to stand behind the project for 2 years in terms of a warranty. Then after that, besides guaranteeing the savings over the 18 years, but the equipment itself then has manufacturer warranties. So if the equipment were to fail, we'd help you go through the warranty process.
And so you're basing the savings on 18 years out. Does the equipment all have 18-year warranties? In other words, what happens when the warranty ends and the equipment fails and we haven't reached our 18-year payback or whatever it is we're hoping for?
So
we go out of pocket to replace these things? I'm trying to understand what happens down the road.
So in some case, for instance, the lighting you have right now, most of it was put in with LED tubes. Those LED tubes fail and they get replaced. That becomes part of maintenance at that point. The main item here, the solar panels, most of that equipment is 20+ years of warranty. The inverters, 10 to 12 years, but panels themselves are typically 20 to 25 years. The racking systems are extended warranties too. So the bulk of that project, the bulk of this project will have long warranties associated with it. The lighting fixtures are typically going to be 5 years. That's kind of standard in the lighting industry. They do have a shelf life. If they fail, then they'll need to be replaced. But the LEDs last a lot longer than the fluorescents, and what you've been dealing with for years and years. This will be an improvement.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions? Okay, so Rachel, go ahead, Ms. Gilliar.
So Kathy, just one question about an aside. You mentioned that if we go out to the voter, we could get an extra 10% in state aid. Is that accurate? Like on top of the 20%?
Yeah. Yes, that's accurate.
So is that something that we want to discuss more? Because 10% of that amount of money is a big amount of money.
That would mean holding it off, not to do it, not to start January of 2025, right? Because to go out to voters, you'd have to get it out.
So the reason
So
to
you would
not
push
do
it back,
is
right?
to
And then
speed things up.
Well, I'm just pointing that out as time frame. We would have to wait. But I think the reason Kathy said not to is because this is paying for itself, so it is no extra cost, right? Oh, right.
Can I just clarify that it's 10% more of the state aid, not 10% more of the project? So the state aid is 1.3 million, the 10% would be an extra $130,000, which we'd probably lose in escalation if we were to.
Right, you would pay an escalation for sure.
That's a very, very different number than 10% on what the total amount was, which is what I thought. So.
Thank you. Okay.
Just a very quick comment, which is I just want us to all remember, at least I will tell you why I support this, which is that it appears to be for the most part budget neutral. We may be able to pick holes in it, but in reality, we are getting solar power, and about a third of the energy that the school district is going to be due to solar power and energy reductions, and that's greener for the world. Like, that's why we're doing this.
Right. Oh, and as the energy rates go up, we save more, right? Because it's money we wouldn't be paying in the future. So, Kathy, what are you asking of us today? Are you asking for direction? Is there something?
This was really an update to let you know. Now we're going to work on the contract with Renew that lays out what was just discussed today.
So we'll see, the next time we see this will be when it's on for that contract to be approved?
Yes.
In May?
So I would just ask the board, because this did come up at the budget committee, and which is why we asked for New to come here, I would just ask the board that, just to make sure that we're all okay, because I don't want us to proceed having a contract drawn up and more work
Exactly.
done and the architect working with, if the
That's what I was
entire,
getting at.
so I think we should
I'm gonna
just
take
get a
of the
sense.
board.
Thank you.
Exactly. So I would like to get a sense of the board, if everybody, so we've heard the presentation, the next step is going to be that what we essentially see here is going to be put on our agenda. Is everybody comfortable with that? I guess just say if you're not, because I think everybody is. So,
If it's truly budget neutral, I'm comfortable with it.
okay. And so, Ms. Manuel, you've made it very clear that it will be budget neutral and it finances itself. So we look forward to approving the contract in May. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Brian. And I'm sorry, I lost the name, but thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Bye. Okay, so Ms. Manuel, you're going to do the budget presentation from here? Great. Ragazine, yes. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ragazine. I had it written down.
Ms. Manuel and I are hoping that the board got all the questions out of the way before this presentation. In all seriousness, thank you, Robert. We appreciate it. I want to thank my team and certainly thank the board for this collaborative effort as we move forward with this proposed budget. And we feel at this point, this is not only student-centered, but it aims to uphold the high standards that we have set forth in our school district. So again, you're going to see some of these slides and they're not really repeating themselves. We're hoping that it reinforces what we're focused on, which is, again, our North Star. This really helped guide us as we move through this extensive and lengthy budget process, and at times incredibly challenging. But I think in the end, what we're sharing before you this evening is what's best for kids.
So again, the budget focus has been student-centered, also maintaining the programs and strengthening our position for future budgets. It seeks to create efficiencies in instruction and services while focusing on the mental health of our students. So again, just our budget strategies are striving for excellence and commitment to high-quality instructional programs with a positive school culture and climate with an emphasis on social, emotional wellness, long-term planning and facility upgrades. So this offers a snapshot of really the important figures for our draft budget. An allowable levy-to-levy increase of $5,240,635, or 3.39%, over the prior year's levy has been calculated as our tax levy limit. So if you look at the numbers for 24-25, you'll see the appropriations, which is our expenditures, are a 5.6% increase. The tax levy is a 4.55% increase. So this would require a 60% voter approval because we're asking voters to override the tax levy limit by 1.15 percentage points. So this reflects the consensus of the board at our last March 19th meeting.
So despite all the challenges, we aim to prepare a budget that maintains high-quality teaching and learning and also funds high-priority initiatives. And clearly over the years, we've set forth multiple initiatives that I'm really happy to report on. And as you'll notice in the top, the most important thing is ensuring that staffing levels meet the educational needs of our students. We have to, I believe, I think we would all believe, continue to support elementary literacy, and we have an upcoming new mathematics program implementation, and there's a lot of professional development and materials that are required. Also to note, please understand, we've heard many comments, certainly over the past few months, a lot of conversation related to pre-K and how important those times are for our students. So pre-K is intact, PEP CTE, Twilight, and ICT programs would still be maintained. And supporting the district's commitment to providing devices. Now listen, whether we like the fact that there is a one-on-one initiative here in our school district, and I think certainly there are pros and cons to it, but there are certain requirements that our students have, and I'm happy to say that we will be able to maintain not only the tools and devices, but the infrastructure, which is incredibly complex as we move forward with teaching and learning. The funds that are high priority initiatives, as we've said before, it really does support our strategic plan in the portrait of a graduate. And we heard from some of our high school students here at Schreiber the importance of social emotional learning and mental health. And that stays intact. And in some ways, we augment some of those initiatives. So we're happy to say, get into a little more detail as far as what that looks like in our next slide. So what's included in this particular budget? And I'm happy to say this quite a bit. First and foremost, it maintains funds for field trips. And we have heard over the years how important field trips are for our students. And so it maintains field trip expenditures as far as transportation. And we know how costly those expenditures are. Maintaining funds for clubs at each building at the same level as this year. That's really important to note. Funds to cover the cost of the incredible popular summer music program for our district residents. That is, again, we want to show that we're looking at all different facets of what we set forth for our students. And then funds for a 55-passenger school bus. And over time, we're hoping this does reduce some of the other costs once we find and procure the drivers to do so, because we understand how expensive transportation can be. And if you look at the three circles, I'm going to work my way from left to right. We're looking at staffing, and we want to maintain the Weber social worker. That is, we've heard time and time again how important not only that time is for our students at Weber, but to maintain that support. And we've had some class size concerns. So we want to make sure we have within this budget one FTE teacher to reduce class size, to be determined where that would be at this point. The focus on mental health, again, there are so many things that we do within all of our schools. Our staff is really second to none as far as the supports that we provide for our students. But there are times that we have to think outside the box. In some of our similar school districts, who reside to the left, to the right of us, and even to the south, they look to go above and beyond and have partnerships with certain organizations. And so we're looking to not only partner with a different organization, they set up behavioral health clinics that are staffed with psychiatrists, which we don't have, social workers and nurses for those students and families who truly need that extra support. And I think it's safe to say that these are times where our students and families need that extra support. We will be able to take advantage of the clinic, which is close to here in Mineola, so it's not too far from Port. We would offer triage services, or they wouldn't, I wouldn't. They would offer these services. And they can do assessments there instead of parents or guardians bringing their child to the ER, which is, again, to get immediate help. And we know at times students need help. We can't wait for beds 3 months, 6 months from now, even 2 weeks. So it does expedite that process. And then I'll end with, they also work on coordinating mental health care for students beyond the immediate support that we can provide here in our schools. And then finally, when it comes to executive functioning skills, listen, these are skills that have, let's say, either stunted or blunted over the past several years. And I think we know the reasons why. And the reason why we're targeting 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade, we have 3rd grade while they're in the middle, almost to the tail end of their elementary experience, where those organizational skills, the locus of control, learning how to recalibrate, now more than ever, our students need to learn how to do that, coupled with, of course, when they transition to Weber, and then finally when they transition to Schreiber. And we're hoping by taking this multi-pronged approach that we will have students who are in a better position to learn.
So the transfer to capital is designated each year to maintain the district's buildings and facilities. It's the fourth year of our 5-year roof repair replacement plan. Funds to continue repairs and upgrades to the bathrooms and flooring district-wide are also included, as well as funds to address and repair the Montfort retaining wall and tennis courts.
So, with this budget, of course, it comes with proposed reductions, and I'm thankful that we could include some potential additions, but we have to be mindful of where we can be more efficient and hopefully at some point be more effective. With that, we're looking at restructuring administrators to take a more global view as far as how we can maximize what we do with our amazing administrators. We do, unfortunately, we're looking at reducing staff with minimal impact on their programming, pre-K through 12. Again, I've said this at the last board meeting. I think we have both sides of the aisle as far as how some people feel about classroom coverages at Schreiber and our other schools. But I could tell you what we're looking to do is reduce the initial proposal and reduce that by half and look at other ways to cover those classes. Professional development is, we know that the most important relationship our students have is with their teachers. There's no doubt about it. And we always want to look at ways that we could augment their skills and support what they're doing in the classroom. But we're looking to make some reductions from the previous 2 years because teachers have been doing a lot of training, certainly at all different grade levels over the past several years, and I'm very thankful for that. When it comes to pre-K, we're looking at reducing, and we're going from 5 sections to 4 sections, from 20 students in the class to 18 students in the class. And what that would mean is, we would lose, a teacher and some paraprofessionals, but also we're looking at the possibility, what we would have to do is reduce one transportation route as well. And then the Twilight program has been a huge success. It's been a pivotal part of our move toward increasing our graduation rates. We will be focusing more on and prioritizing our juniors and seniors. And if we do have room, we can certainly include sophomores. And with this proposed reduction, we're looking at preserving our current programs with a reduction of about 2.1 million and a reduction of a total staff of 9.5 FTEs.
So as we've been discussing through all of these budget presentations, just like other school districts, we've had many fiscal challenges with minimal increases to foundation aid, increases in health insurance rates, increases in employee retirement system contributions, as well as increases to transportation costs. With a tax cap of the 3.39%, this is lower than our inflation costs. And we still have capital projects that are necessary to maintain our facilities and buildings. So it's really a balancing of these additional costs, but offsetting how do we maintain our students' programs.
So the question that comes up and will continue to come up often is why override the tax levy limit at this point? And it really comes down to preserving the programs that we have to support all of our students, not just some of our students, but all of our students, and that's really important to note. Since late January, the district has been refining the budget and really ensuring that it aligns with our strategic plan, as we said before in our portrait. We have made careful reductions and very thoughtful reductions to staff and expenditures. We've analyzed those reserves. We've allocated uses of reserves, we believe, in a very prudent manner. This budget anticipates foundation aid, the aid run as it should with no changes to the CPI figure used to calculate aid, but we're hoping, and actually we've had some good news. We mentioned this at the last board meeting. Their Assemblywoman Sality's office has found some monies for us. I believe it was $125,000, which is great. And that will be earmarked for facility use revenue, which we've taken into account. And then finally, by not depleting the reserves, and by the way, since Ms. Manuel's been here, we have really, as many of you know, certainly at this table, we've increased our reserves over the years, and that is a very good thing for us. So in case of an emergency such as this, we can be thoughtful and deliberate and use those as needed. And so we can make sure that we're in a better place for next year.
So just to review the numbers for the budget, we do have an allowable tax levy increase over last year of 3.39%, with an allowable tax levy of 159,763. We're proposing the tax levy of 161,546,663, which is $1.7 million above the allowable levy limit. So this would require the 60% majority vote. We also have our proposition number 2, use of the capital reserve. Now, I just want to clarify that this is different than the transfer to capital. The transfer to capital is used for improvements yearly, things such as our bathrooms. The capital reserve is something that the voters approved on May 17th of 2022. Currently, as of June 30th, 23, we have a balance of $4,072,000. So this reserve may be used to finance the cost of district-wide replacements, renovations of electrical services, HVAC equipment, and associated projects. So in order to establish the reserve, we required voter approval, and to actually spend from the reserve, again, we need voter approval. So I just wanted to let people see the proposition so that when they see it on the ballot, they're not surprised by it. So it will say, resolved that the Port Washington Union Free School District Board of Education be authorized to appropriate and expend $4,055,000 from the school district's pre-established capital reserve fund entitled Facilities Improvement Program 1, Port Washington UFSD, for the anticipated permissible purpose of upgrading and improving district-wide incoming electrical services. And I really want to stress that this has no impact to the tax levy. These are funds that were put aside for this situation.
So in closing, we have a budget timeline, and April 16th will certainly be here before we know it, and that's the adoption of the budget by the Board of Education. After that, we have a public budget hearing, which is on May 7th, and then finally, as we know, the budget vote takes place on the 21st of May, and of course, it's a school board election as well, and there's a lot of work that we have to do before the 21st of May, which is educating the community and certainly all of our stakeholders. So any question that they have, we make sure we answer every single one and understand why what we're proposing we feel is in the best interest of the students. So thank you.
And just one final, we have an appendix really for the Board of Education and for our constituents. You'll see the initial rollover budget, and then we have all of the changes that were made that we've discussed with the board. And then you'll see the final draft budget. And that's really for informational purposes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manuel and Dr. Hines. Before we go to questions, I just want to kind of set the stage and remind the Board of Education that at our last meeting, we had chosen from scenarios 1 and 2. This is effectively scenario 1, which is the direction that the board had given unanimously to the administration to continue with. So this is really intended to be more of an update and a refresher as we move through the process. And what I want to note, I'm not sure that everybody noticed, is that if you look at slide,
Page 11.
yeah, page 11, thank you for adding the numbers this time. You'll notice that the amount that we would be overriding the allowable levy limit is 1.782. At our last meeting, it was approximately 1.9. So as this process continues, as was committed to the board and as was committed to the taxpayers, as additional revenues are found, it will be used to reduce the ask of the taxpayers. This would be from Gina Stiletti's grant, I'm assuming, because it matches by it's about 2,000 off.
Yes, that's correct.
Great. So I know, Deborah, you're going to have questions about this as additional revenue sources are hopefully found, although as we approach the adoption on the 16th, and I assume that would be the last point that we can make any changes, is the 16th. But hopefully if any money comes through, if there's changes to the CPI formula, all of that would be used to continue pushing down the ask to the taxpayers.
That is correct.
Yeah, so I'll just restate what was stated last time, which is we're in a situation that's unfortunate that we're in based on our expenses growing at a rate that greatly outpaces our revenue. And I personally think that you guys have done a really good job of balancing cuts, and the bulk of this is coming from cuts, strategic use of reserves matched to their intended purpose, such as the ERS and the TRS, and asking the taxpayers to make a decision about public education, and if it's something that in Port Washington we want to support. And I know that taxes seem high in Port Washington. They seem high. My taxes feel high. Everybody's taxes feel high, but we do spend significantly less on tax dollars per student in Port Washington than any of our neighbors to a pretty high the tune of a pretty high percentage. I think we're under 30,000, and some of our neighbors go as high as 45,000 per student out of the tax dollars. So we actually aren't even moving the needle with this increase in the tax levy. And I think that that's a choice that the Port Washington voters have made over many years about what the commitment is to public education. And this is a small request to just allow us to keep the status quo flat with significant cuts as well. So I'm really hopeful that the community will support this request. And with that, we can go to questions or comments. Ms. Bays?
I just have one question, Ms. Manuel. Have you gotten any feedback on when we'll have state numbers? I heard somewhere on the 4th, but do we know anything?
I know that we have heard it was going to be on time, but things I'm hearing is that it's not going to be on time. We'd be lucky if it was by the 7th, but so I'm not sure, unfortunately.
That's all I have.
Dr. Block?
So I'm looking at the 4.55%, and my understanding is, does that include the transfer to capital?
Yes, that does.
Okay, so that's all. All right. And so what is it excluding the transfer to capital?
I would have to get those figures, the exact figures for you.
It would probably have to be close to 2, right?
Yes,
Because
it's close to
if
2.
2% is the cap, it's the things outside the cap that allows to go
It's
above.
significantly less, Adam. And if you think about it, like in comparison to other years, like last year's budget, which was inside the cap, we were at like 3.66%. Is that right? So it's really the ask to the taxpayer on the whole budget is barely 1%, including the transfer to capital, which is doubling from last year. So it's a really modest.
That there wasn't another 2% that was getting tacked onto this. This is all in.
Right. So it's important to note, and I think for the community who's here and talking about the budget, that the 4.5% levy limit increase should not be compared to the 2% tax cap. It's really compared to our, there's other exclusions that are built in that are growing at a higher rate than 2%. So you're really comparing that 4.5% to like a normal year for us is 3.6, 3.7. Is that accurate?
Right, you're comparing it to the 3.39%. So you're actually 1.5 percentage points above the allowable.
Can I just add that that's the key point, right? Is that we have to not remember that this 2% cap is a fallacy. Every year it changes. As we know, we've had years where our cap was actually 1 point something, other years where our cap has been 4 point something, and we weren't even overriding. So I think we just have to be careful with the word 2% cap. What I think is critical and what we discussed last meeting is that the difference, and I guess the question is, the number went down. So at our last meeting, it was 4.6%. Now we're at 4.5 because you added that 125,000. Is it still $207 difference if we were at 3.39 or now 4.55? In other words, as we discussed, I think that's what we have to keep remembering, is that the additional money that we're actually asking the average, or we're discussing the average taxpayer to pay, the additional, because regardless, we would be at the cap, right? And the cap is 3.39. So the additional is the difference, and that's 200 some odd dollars, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
1.7 million.
Right.
Right, 1.1. Oh, yes, I didn't have, the average household is 1.1 million assessed, not sale value, assessed. What the tax people say is your assessment. Okay.
Ms. Melkonian?
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Gilliar?
I'm okay right now in terms of questions. I guess I just want to add, I think we're landing in terms of the numbers in, to me, the place that makes sense in a world of bad choices, right? Like, none of this is our ideal. We wanted to be having conversations about how we could expand our program and improve our program. And I'm excited that there's a little bit in here that are things that we really needed to do to improve things. But given the fiscal cliff and the financial climate, I really think this sort of balances keeping our school intact, because we really don't want to do damage to our schools, but also being very responsible to the taxpayer as best we can in this climate.
So I say every year, what do we want our schools to look like? And we get these things called the Eclipse from NISBA, that has a compilation of what's going on in Long Island, in New York State, and throughout the country. And throughout the country, schools are talking about, entire school districts are talking about fiscal cliffs throughout the country, because the federal funds have rolled off. The needs that COVID created in terms of mental health needs, learning loss, additional academic supports have outpaced the funding, even for school districts that don't face a tax cap. And we are in the unenviable position of trying to make sure that our students have all the additional supports that they need because of COVID, because of the pandemic, and also are confronted with inflation and a tax cap and a foundation aid formula that isn't taking all of that into account. We also have security needs, we have cybersecurity needs, we have technology needs, we have so many things that go into keeping our district running. And I know none of us is happy with having to go out for a supermajority. In years prior to the tax cap, this wouldn't be called a supermajority. It would just be us trying to do what's right by the district, and we wouldn't have these constraints. But we do, and I'll go on record by saying I don't know how the legislature came up with 2%. It could have been 2.5. It could have been 3. I don't think anybody knows, even in the legislative history. I asked counsel, where did this come from? The legislators aren't clear as to why 2%. And so I think that given the incredible pressure upon school districts everywhere throughout New York State to try to manage, I think it's a perfect storm of the tax cap, the growing needs, even outside of curricular, as I said, security, infrastructure, all of that. I ask, what do we want our district to look like? And I think that Dr. Hines, your cabinet, your staff, had to take a very hard look at all of the nitty-gritty and make the best the decisions that you thought were best to recommend to the board. And as a board, I think we need to trust you on that. I think we've grilled you. I mean, I did from home, like when I was croaking through it, but asking the questions. And I think, again, we just have to ask the community, what do you want our school district to look like? At the end of the day, if this is what is necessary to keep the programming intact, I'm sorry I'm being long-winded, but I'm trying to make up for lost time. We were very proud of the ICT program, and that came at a really large cost to this district. We're very proud of getting students at Schreiber who aren't the traditional students to the finish line, to graduate through Twilight and through CTE. We're proud of our ELL kids and the additional supports we've been able to give to them without the benefit of appropriate state aid, and the same with our students with special needs. So we've put a lot into our school district, and I would just say it would be a real shame to see it disappear. And it will take years upon years upon years upon years to get it all back. So that's my spiel.
All right, Ms. Epstein.
I just have a question for future for the Board of Education between now and the 16th. So in the event that we do get numbers from the state, can I just put a request in, if the board agrees, in advance of the 16th, that we receive like updated numbers of what this will look like, where our foundation aid looks like, you know, kind of that breakdown, so that we have time to look at it before the 16th and see the changes, if any, that it does pertain to. I'm also going to follow up, I don't know if this is what you're going to say, Ms. Bays, but I know that we did speak with Senator Martins. We did have an outstanding call. I know he's been very busy, but I think that we should put on our tickler to reconnect just to see if there were any changes or any numbers that he can add also to our situation, so that we can have that all for us. So I would just say that as we learn more numbers in the time before now and the 16th, if in the packet you can keep us abreast of that information if the board agrees.
So theoretically, I was going to suggest that we talk about it on the 8th, right? So that's why I was asking if we had a sense, because the date I heard was the 4th, but that's, I don't know, right? So even if it's on the 7th, we are meeting on the 8th, right, in the morning. I mean, so maybe we'll have a sense and have some numbers. So that was what I was thinking, because theoretically, the 8th is going to be our last opportunity to speak about the budget as a board. We've done a lot of speaking, I think a lot more than, by the way, other school districts have, right? So again, I've heard in the past, and it's one of my particular words, that transparency. We've been very transparent as regarding this budget and discussing numbers. So theoretically, at the budget meeting on the 8th, we should have maybe some numbers, maybe some more information, and then just look at it a little bit deeper, and then hopefully be ready for the 16th.
Thank you. So we're going to, I guess, wrap this conversation, and thank you for all your hard work during this. And I just want to piggyback very briefly off what Ms. Bays said about that, you know, the Board of Education has tried with the administration, probably to a fault, to be extremely public through all of this process, which I think is why some of the confusion came early on when the gap was very large, that the community was concerned about, because we did feel that we wanted that information out there and have this to be a very transparent process. That being said, we are planning, also as Ms. Bays had suggested previously, to continue with that concept of transparency. We would like to have a public Q&A, which is something that had been requested with the community, where administrators will actually be available to answer questions. We're planning right now that would be on May 9th, which is several weeks before the budget vote. We don't have a location, we don't have details, but I just want to put that out there for everybody that we're aiming for May 9th to do that, and that would be in lieu of the community conversations that are on the district calendar for that day. We are going to try to find a location off campus. So we have not found one. We haven't found one yet, but we will be publishing that on the district calendar as soon as we can. Okay. So Ms. Manuel, thank you very much. And we will move on to the adoption of the meeting minutes. So I would like to make a motion to approve the March 19th Board of Education meeting minutes. Do we have a second? Ms. Bays? All in favor? 7-0, the meeting minutes are adopted. We have no committee reports. Today, no committees met since our last Board of Education meeting. So I would suggest that the dates that were listed last time are still the next date. And if anyone has any question, those will be posted on the agenda. The board was joking that I was moving fast before, that I must have been caffeinated, but you have no idea. You have no idea how fast it's about to go. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Is there something on television?
I'm sorry?
Is there something on television?
You didn't slow down, keep going.
Don't slow me down. Everyone wants to go home. I'd like to make a motion to approve items 13.1.1 through 13.5.2. This is our consent agenda. Before I take the vote, I want to recognize that we do have some donations, which is the Sousa HSA for the 5th grade trip to Adventureland, the Daily HSA for a steam room robotics table, bumpers, and stools, and the Daily HSA for book breaks, which is a virtual author visit. Do I have a second? Ms. Epstein, all in favor? Consent agenda passes 7-0. So we have no policies on for today, which brings us to old business. And the only old business we have is several community comments questions that we will respond to. The first one, and we paraphrase these, is what is the plan to meet the needs of gifted learners if not all 6 PEP teachers are in the budget? And I will say that right now all 6 PEP teachers are in the budget that's being proposed for adoption on the 16th that will be put to the taxpayers for vote. So that is our answer. Hopefully we will have all 6 of those PEP teachers. The next question is, what has been spent in our budget and the files with the budget are incomplete with the library? What do you plan to do? Dr. Hines, do you have, I'm not sure how we should respond to that question. And do we, this is the question about what has been spent in our budget and the files with the budget are incomplete with the library. What do you plan to do? So I have a suggested answer to that question, which is that, and Ms. Manuel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we spend what is in the approved budget. All of the codes are in the budget that is publicly posted and is available in the library. And to the extent that a code that we spend more or less than what is allocated in a code, you will find the fund transfer on an agenda. So any change in a budget line where we spend more or less is publicly available in our agendas. And we wouldn't have a budget v. actual per se to post in the library. Is that an accurate statement? Standard. No, and that would not be standard to do.
If I could clarify too, Jessica Mack has been in touch with the library. And going forward, we can add that, the actual cost to the reports.
And that's something that we would do annually, effectively?
Yes.
So at the end of the school year, we would post the actuals.
Actually, at each budget time, we create books for all 7 of the schools plus the library and the administrative office. So prior to the budget hearing, we actually put all of that information out.
Okay.
And has
on
the
our
actual,
website,
and has the actual money spent? And it says the actuals, like, you know, what was budgeted, what.
I believe last year, I don't think it included the actual figures.
But
So
in the
that
past, we have, right? Because I know we would see them in the past, and I know that we've had them at budget meetings where we look at the line by line, basically.
Yes. Yeah, whenever I put them up, you'll see the actual expenditures, whatever are audited, we put the actual numbers up, and those figures are available.
Right.
Right. And I also want to add, and Ms. Epstein, you brought this to my attention about the audit as well. So do you want to add about that? Okay. So yeah, so we also have an audit which is done by a third party, which is available on the district's website. So if anyone has any questions about whether or not funds were appropriately spent out of the codes, that's all done by state law. It's all studied pursuant to state law by our auditor at the direction of our audit committee. So I hope that answers the question. And the last question, I'll put this one to you, Dr. Hines, is what are you going to do to show us that you are looking at efficiencies and more revenues?
Well, I'm hoping we answered that question tonight with our presentation. You know, The efficiencies will always continue to not only monitor, but try to the best of our ability, look at that not only in the instructional space, but in plants and facilities and everywhere else. But you see with our administrators, we're really reimagining what they do in certain areas. And then when it comes to more revenue, I think it's a great start. They were looking at facilities and what that looks like. And I know there are always talks of a potential grant writer, working for the school district, but we'll continue to see how that fares as we move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. So I hope that answered all of our questions. If you were one of the question askers and it doesn't answer your question, as always, you can email us at boe@portnet.org. Does anybody have any new business? Okay. So we're going to move to our second opportunity for the community to be heard. There's nobody's name signed up, so do we have any takers? Ms. Paredes? Okay.
Hi, Denise Paredes. I noticed in the presentation we had an ask for a community partnership for mental health services for families and kids in crisis, and I'm just wondering if there is a dollar amount that the administration is asking the board to budget for that in particular. Whether you can tell us now or at the next meeting would be great. Thanks.
We did receive the question earlier from Parents Council, and we do have the answer. So
And my apologies, I failed to mention that before. So we're looking at a range between $75,000 and $85,000.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any additional commenters?
And I'm sorry, just to clarify, some of that is aidable through the state as well.
Great, thank you. We are not going to recess to executive session, so I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting will be on April 16th, where we will be adopting our budget. And on May 7th, we will have our formal state-required public hearing that is in addition to the May 9th Q&A. So do I have a second? Ms. Epstein?
No, that's Ms. Bays.
Every time. Ms. Bays?
Yes, second.
Second. All in favor? 7-0. 9:21.